Good evening. Welcome to our Old Testament Bible study. If you've got your Bibles, we're in Genesis chapter 9. We've left Noah and the family on the ark, and tonight they're going to get off. Get out on dry ground, and time's going to go by and plant a vineyard, and all kinds of stuff's going to happen here. So let's get started. Chapter 9, verse 1. God blessed Noah and his sons and said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply, replenish the earth, same command that he given to Adam and Eve long ago. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast. That's because now man's going to become a meat eater, no longer just vegetarians. Every beast of the earth, upon every fowl of the air, upon all that moves upon the earth, upon all the fishes of the sea, into your hand they've delivered. Every moving thing that lives will be meat for you. Even as the green herb, meat and veggies, have I given you all things. But flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, you'll not eat. And remember, Moses is the author of this, and by Moses' days, that had become a pagan ritual, that the pagans would have rituals where they would drink blood. God told his people not to participate in that. And surely, now look at the flip side of this, the animals are going to be afraid of you because they're going to be food for you, but watch out, you'll be food for them too. Surely your blood of all your lives will I require. At the hand of every beast will I require it. At the hand of man, at the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man. There's going to be violence. You've got to watch out. The bears and the tigers will be trying to kill you. And eventually, as they replenish the earth, there'll be violence in the land and people will be killing people. Now, verse 6 is a really big verse. We're going to spend some time on here. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of God made he man. So this is where we see the age of conscience is gone. Before the flood, everybody just did what they wanted to do, and God had given man a conscience, but like Paul writes to Timothy later on in the New Testament, there's a lot of people back then, a lot of people today, whose conscience has been seared with a hot iron. That don't work. It didn't work back then. We see people on the news tonight that you turn it on and they're called anarchists. They don't want any government reigning over them. They just want to do what they want to do. And that's what conditions were like before the flood. But now God sets up government. He says man's going to need a government to govern them. And the first rule that he gives, he said, these murderers out there, said they need to be eradicated too. The government has the right to take somebody's life. That's called capital punishment. I believe in that because the Bible teaches it. Now, I have been asked this before when somebody finds out that I'm pro-life, says, well, how can you be for the death penalty and be pro-life? Isn't that inconsistent? And I had to think about that for a while and work it out because, no, it's both based on the same premise, that life is precious and it's made in the image of God. Therefore, God says anybody who takes another human life, then they have to pay the ultimate price, the most that they could pay, and that's they have to pay with their own life for taking a life. Now, on the other end, you see, it's like that's with the abortion debate too. When I was a young Christian, I thought, well, anybody that's for these abortion rights people, they're just must be just demon-possessed madmen or something. But as I've grown and I've listened to other people, that's really the answer to a lot of our problems, if we could just listen to one another sometimes. I've come to realize that nobody on either side of that issue really wants more abortions. Both sides, when you get down to it, they want less abortions. They'd really like to see zero abortions. But the pro-abortion folks, they see that in their eyes as something noble that they're doing. They're standing up for that woman's right, that the woman's got a right to do with her own body as she pleases. Now see, I see it as a more nobler cause with the same premise that I want to stand up for the right of that unborn baby, that nobody else is standing up for that baby's body to have a right to be born. And that old argument that we got decades ago about it's just a blob anyway, nobody believes that anymore. I mean, we're living in the age of ultrasound where I've seen young girls come in here and want to show me their baby pictures and it's an ultrasound and they just barely know they're pregnant. But boy, you can see that little baby sometimes sucking its thumb and, it ain't no blob. They're just as proud of it as if it's a family picture that's made years later on down the line somewhere. And so it's a baby. We all know that, and it's a life. And I believe that no matter what the circumstances was that it was planted, no matter what those circumstances is, that nobody has a right to take that life. And that's my position on that. I also believe too, like the pro-life people, the church ought to take the position too that we will take these babies that nobody else wants. And I believe that would happen because I know too many people now that are raising kids in the foster system because nobody wanted those kids. I know people now that would have been trying to adopt, but they could not adopt a baby. And I think Mother Teresa set the example of that years ago when she approached President Clinton back in the early 90s, and Congress had tried to stop that partial birth abortion at least 2 different times, and President Clinton vetoed it both times. And that was where a baby could be literally coming down the birth canal at full birth, going to be born. And you could catch it just before it got out, and you could still open up the back of its skull and vacuum out its brains. And they called that abortion. And Congress tried to stop that, but President Clinton, he kept vetoing it. And Mother Teresa went and confronted him about it. And the president said, but Mother Teresa, what will we do with all these babies that nobody wants? And Mother Teresa didn't flinch. She said, give them to me. And that's really the model that we should take in this situation too. But I don't believe that being for capital punishment and being pro-life is inconsistent at all, because it's all based on life is precious and it's all created in the image of God, and nobody has a right to take that life. And if you take another human life, then God gave the government the right to carry out capital punishment. Now, it shouldn't take decades and decades to do that and all this stuff that we've got now, but let's move on here. Whosoever shed man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, for in the image of God made he man. And you, be fruitful and multiply, bring forth abundantly in the earth, and multiply therein. Fill the earth again now that the flood's over with. The judgment's over and the flood's come. And God spake to Noah and his sons with him, saying, and behold, I establish my covenant with you, and with your seed after you, that's you and me, that we're all descendants of Noah and his 3 sons. Every one of us come through Noah, and every one of us come through either Ham, Shem, or Japheth, his sons also. I establish my covenant with you and with your seed after you, and with every living creature that is with you, of the fowl, of the cattle, of every beast of the earth with you. From all that go out of the ark, to every beast of the earth, I will establish my covenant with you. Neither shall all flesh be cut off any more by the waters of a flood. Neither shall there be any more a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, this is the token. This is a sign, a token of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that's with you. For perpetual generations it still stands. Do I set my bow in the cloud? Now, every time you see a rainbow hanging out there, remember that God says, now I'm at peace with man. He's destroyed the earth and he started back over. And we see a rainbow as a beautiful thing, but really I think the imagery here is, back in that day, a bow was an object of war. And God says, the war's over. I've hung my bow in the clouds. Now, I'm not going to destroy the earth with a flood again. And it'll be a token of a covenant between me and the earth. And it'll come to pass when I bring a cloud over the earth that the bow shall be seen in the cloud. And I'll remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature of the earth. Waters shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh. And you notice how many times he uses all flesh. I keep going back. The Bible's quite clear. It was a universal flood. It wasn't a localized flood. All flesh was destroyed. And the bow will be in the cloud, and I'll look upon it, that I may remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that's on the earth. And God said to Noah, this is the token of the covenant which I've established between me and all flesh on the earth. And the sons of Noah that went forth out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Remember them three names now. It's Noah, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, and their four wives, with the three boys, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. And the next verse says, now Ham is the father of Canaan. Now, he didn't have them yet. Remember, Moses is writing this, looking back on it as God revealed it to him. But Ham became the father through the generations of the Canaanites. And when Moses is writing this, his people are dealing with these Canaanites. God's sending them to the land of Canaan. And they're a bunch of sinful heathen over there. So Noah's telling them, says, Ham was their father, and he was cursed because of what he did to Noah. We haven't got to that part yet. We're about to. And he says, that's why these people are so sinful. They're living under the curse. So Ham's the father of Canaan. And these are the three sons of Noah. Of them was the whole earth overspread. And Noah began to be a husbandman or a farmer, and he planted a vineyard. And he drank of the wine, and he was drunken. Now, here's our hero of the faith, still found over here in Hebrews chapter 11, the hero of the faith, Noah. But now he gets off the boat, and time goes by, and he makes a vineyard, he makes some wine, and he drinks too much, and next thing you know, we find him naked in his tent, drunk. You know why? All the sinners weren't destroyed in the flood. They still laid up on the boat floating around, wasn't they? Remember why Noah was there? He found grace. He was uncovered within his tent, naked and drunk in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and he told his two brothers outside. And Shem and Japheth took a garment. They laid it upon their shoulders, and they walked backwards and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were backwards, and they saw not their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine, covered in a blanket now. But there may be more than meets the eye to this verse, no pun intended. He knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, cursed be Canaan. A servant of servants shall he be to his brethren. And he said, blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan will be his servant. And God shall enlarge Japheth, his other boy, and he'll dwell in the tents of Shem, but Canaan will be his servant. So Canaan's been cursed now. And Noah lived after the flood 350 years, and that made him to be 950 years old. And he died. And you will too, I'm sorry to have to tell you. But that's what the story of Jesus is about, that this world ain't all there is, to be ready for the next world. See you next week.